Alrighty, if you had to ask me what my favorite linear form was, it was point and slope form. I know you never would, but it is just the truth. I love point slope form. It is the longest looking one, so I'm sure it looks scary, but it is quick and fast, and this homework's going to be fun for you guys. Point slope form means exactly what it sounds like. I mean, think back to slope intercept form. When you have slope intercept form, you have the slope and the intercept, the y-intercept. You have the things that are in the name. That's the point of the name. So if we have point slope form, that means we have a point off of the line, and we have the slope of the line. So m is always the slope. There's your slope. And then x1 and y1 are going to be your point. So m is our slope, and x1, y1 is our point. And that is what makes point slope form. Okay, so let's just dive right into it. We're going to talk about writing the equation and graphing it at the same time. So, starting with the equation, plug in the given information. You're given a point and you're given a slope. So what I like to do is I like to write out my formula. So it's y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. I'm just going to take y1 because that's part of my point. And there's my y value. I'm going to plug in a 7 right there. And then my x1, that is the 5. So I'm just going to put in 5. And then my slope is negative 2/3. So I'm going to take out my slope, my m, and I'm going to put in negative 2/3. And that's how you write the equations. So that's going to be part of your homework on Delta Math. It's just going to ask you to write the equation given that kind of information. And now, for the graph, when we were doing slope-intercept form last time, we were always starting on the y-axis because that was what we were given, right? We were given the y-intercept. We were given the number off of the y-axis. Now we're given just a random point, 5, 7. Well, that's fine. Let's find 5, 7. Right there. And then from there, same as like when I was with my y-intercept, I'm going to count my slope. So we're going to go down 2, because that's negative 2, over 3. I think, yep, I did good. 2 points make a line. And that's how it's done. So very similar to slope-intercept form. We're just not starting on the intercept anymore. We're starting on whatever point they gave us. And we're counting the slope from there as opposed to on the y-axis. Okay? Ooh, let's try it again. So, let's see. Let's do the point 2, 3. And we're going to do the slope of negative 1. So, first I'm going to write my equation. Y minus my y value, which is 3, equals my slope, parenthesis, x minus my x value. I went fast, but if you follow what we did in the last example, you're going to be doing it that fast too on your homework, I promise. Okay, it's y minus y1 being the y value, equals the slope times x minus x1, which is the x value. I am just plugging the numbers that I was given in for those pieces right there. Everything else remained the same. So from here, I'm going to graph it. I'm going to do 2, 3. And then from there, I'm going to go down 1, over 1. I'm going over 1 because it's a whole number. Every whole number is a fraction over 1, positive 1, so it's going to go to the right. And by doing that, I make a line that goes down because I have a negative slope. Last one. for this section anyway. Let's see. Let's do negatives instead. -2, -3. Let's do a slope of, I love the slope, 1/2. Okay. Watch what happens, because this is the tricky part. This is where I see mistakes on the homework. Y minus my y value. My y value is -3. Double negative. Equals my slope times x minus my x value, which is -2. Double negative. That's okay. Delta Math will accept that. But if you don't like that, 2 negatives make a positive. So I would, in my formula, change those to pluses. So I don't know if you've noticed, but what happens is whatever the point was, it's like the signs always switch on them. They're always the opposite. Okay. All right. Sorry, I had to pause the video. I'm sure I was talking about how the signs are different, so I'm going to try and finish that thought and then move on. I have a +2 and a +3. That became a -3 and a -2. That is always going to happen. So if you want to triple check your negatives, triple check your equations, make sure your points are always opposite to what they look like in your equation, right? -2, -3 became +3 and +2. +5 became -5. +7 became -7. So, there is a purpose to it. It's hard to explain why in a video. So, just trust it for the moment. If you want to ask, please email me and ask. We can talk about it a little bit more. But let's move on to graphing. So I'm going to take my point. Remember, they're always opposite, so that's going to be a -2, -3, -2, -3. And then from there, I'm going to go up 1 over 2. We're going to do that a couple times. 1 over 2, just for the sake of making a more accurate looking line. And then that's how it's done. Okay. Now, remember horizontal and vertical lines. Horizontal lines feels backwards. Again, like there's a lot of things about math that just feel backwards, but there's a reason, I promise. But horizontal lines are in y equals, and they have a slope of 0. Vertical lines are x equals something, and they have an undefined slope. So on your homework, you're going to get questions that say, they pass through this line with a slope of 0. So, they're the exact same kind of questions that say this, right? It passes through this point with a slope of -2/3, but now it's a slope of 0. So you have to go in your mind and you have to say, okay, that is a horizontal line. So I'm going to go to 2, 3, and that is a horizontal line. And then I can say, well, that's the point. Well, that's the line y equals 3. Same thing, 2, 3. That's a running theme for this lesson, I guess. Undefined slope, so that is straight up and down a vertical line. And that is x equals my x value, which is 2. Okay, last thing. What if we weren't given the slope? What if you have a question, which you will, where you're only given 2 points? Well, that's okay. From 2 points, I can find the slope. So we are taking lots of stuff that we have learned previously and we are plugging it all in to here. So first thing I need to do is I need to find my slope. So slope formula is -1, excuse me, -6 over, I started with -1, so I have to start with 2, minus -3, and that is -7 over 5, and that's great. That cannot be simplified. You can triple check in your calculator though. So that's my slope now. Then you need to choose just one of the points. I always like to choose the first one because it's the first one and I don't know. We're going to plug in our slope now that we have it, and one point, and we're going to make our formula. Point slope formula. What if I use the other point? That's totally okay. It's going to look different, but Delta Math will still mark it right. Okay, both of those are perfectly acceptable answers in Delta Math. I picked a different point for each, so you can see the 6 and the -3 in the first one, and you can see the 2 and the -1 in the second one. But my slope is the same because the slope is just the change between the points, okay? So that's how it's done. Like, that is the craziest, scariest part, okay? You have to use the slope formula first, and then do what you have been doing. We'll see. I'll do one more, and then we'll call it good. So let's see. Let's do 2 points. Let's not use 2, 3 again. So let's use our favorite numbers, 6, 7, and I don't know, -5, 3. Okay. First thing is slope formula. Find your slope. We need point slope, so we need slope. 7 minus 3 over 6 minus -5, which is 4 over 11. I'm doing that in my head. Your calculator can absolutely do it for you too. Okay. Now from here, I'm going to just choose one of the points. Of course, we're going to use 6, 7 because we love it. And we're going to do point slope form, which is y minus, I'm going to write the formula first. Okay, y minus the y value, which is 7, equals the slope, which is 4 over 11, times x minus 6. This is what I'd put in a Delta Math, and I would be done, and it'd be great. Okay, you guys have a great time, great day. Email me if you have any questions.